Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping into a genuinely breathtaking sci-fi fantasy epic. We're counting down the top 5 essential things you absolutely need to know about the beautifully complex universe of MoonDom FiVe. So, if you're looking to wrap your head around the mechanics, the magic, and honestly the incredibly brutal reality of this hidden world, you are in the perfect place.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the premise here is just completely wild. I want you to imagine a universe where mastering the fundamental forces of physics isn't just science, it's literal magic. But here's the twist. Rather than being revered for it, the kids born with these overwhelming gifts are actually seen as a massive burden. They are quite literally thrown away, banished to a supposedly dead hidden moon that essentially serves as a cosmic penal colony. The stakes are sky high right out of the gate. And to really grasp what makes this world tick, we need to jump into our countdown. Kicking off our countdown at number 5, the 5-moon universe.
Now, to set the macro stage for this entire universe, we've got to look at the deeply held religious lore that all these societies share. It's this epic tale of 3 cosmic siblings. Basically, the creator brother built the original home planet, but eventually, he heard a call to move on. And once he left, the destroyer brother just went to work, literally devouring the land until the planet was nothing but a swirling gas giant. So in a totally desperate move, the sustainer sister grabbed whatever life-giving elements she could and transferred them into the atmosphere, creating 5 orbiting moons. She managed to cultivate vibrant life on 4 of them, but she left the 5th moon isolated. And over time, that 5th moon, Almathea, has quietly become the ultimate dumping ground for society's absolute outcasts and worst criminals.
Moving right along to number 4, physics-based magic systems. Transitioning from that ancient myth into some really cool hard sci-fi, we absolutely have to talk about alignment. This is the world's incredibly grounded physics meets magic system. And what's brilliant is that these magical alignments are mapped directly to the 4 fundamental forces of physics. Seriously, it's so cool. You've got avianoids like Ryder who manipulate gravity. They can literally shed their own weight to fly or burden objects to crush them flat. Then there are voltoids like Gauge who control electromagnetism so they can summon massive storms or just sap the bioelectricity right out of you. Morphoids deal with the weak force, which gives them alchemical and healing powers by tweaking molecular makeups. And finally, thermoids like Yarrow control the strong force, giving them these frankly terrifying abilities over atomic fusion and fission. And every single class has an active ability they can trigger, plus a passive ability that's essentially this constant inner vision radar. And to really understand how visceral this magic is, just picture their naming ceremony. This is where these aligned kids finally unlock their true potential. Imagine a young, frail Voltoid boy stepping into this grand rotunda completely filled with ancient weapons. He takes a deep breath, and he screams his own name. Gauge! Instantly, the sharp smell of ozone completely fills the room. Blue and white sparks are exploding into the air. And from this massive pile of relics, a customized electrical staff blasts across the room, flips head over heels, and just violently crashes right into his hands. It is an explosive, absolutely life-changing rite of passage.
Hitting number 3 on our list, the Easter Egg Exiles.
Now, to even get to that triumphant naming ceremony, these kids have to survive a literal descent into hell. Not kidding. They arrive on the 5th moon in what the locals grimly call Easter eggs. These are massive, living delivery vessels that were originally meant for inter-MoonDom trade. But the brutal reality, the ruling classes are packing banished criminals and these gifted kids into these pods. They fill them up with this thick, oxygen-rich gel so they don't instantly die on impact, and then they sling them down from spinning atmospheric tethers. Elder Rowena, who's the last reigning aligned matriarch of the 5th moon, literally stands there watching these things streak across the sky like shooting stars, waiting for the massive pods to violently crash land into the deep red dirt of the Almathean plains and spill out their gelatinous cargo.
So you might be wondering, why on earth do the other moons exile these kids in the first place? Well, when they're pulled from the wreckage, they're called hatchlings. And they are bone-thin, frail, and, incredibly, often completely mute. Why? Remember those passive abilities we talked about earlier? That constant molecular or gravitational radar? It never turns off. It is constantly running in the background, just draining every single ounce of their physical energy. To the rest of the MoonDoms, these kids aren't magical prodigies at all. They are just exhausting, lethargic burdens that are nearly impossible to keep fed. So they throw them away.
Which brings us to number 2, the power of pemmican.
So how did these broken little hatchlings eventually become powerful magic wielders? It all comes down to the science fantasy marvel of epigenetic magic, specifically channeled through a super basic survival food called pemmican. But here's the kicker.
It behaves completely differently depending on exactly who cooks it. If an unaligned person makes it, hey, it's a great, highly nutritious trail ration. But if it's prepared by an aligned cook who is actively using their inner vision, a symbiotic relationship happens. It literally triggers an epigenetic activation. The food gets imbued with protective attributes. For the aligned kids, eating it increases their cellular integrity, safely unlocks those massive active abilities, and critically, stops them from draining themselves to death.
Let's walk through exactly how this builds a literal lifeline for the hatchlings. Rowena uses a very precise three-step process. First, she prepares the pemmican using her own avianoid inner vision. Second, she feeds just a tiny crumb of it to the weakened hatchlings. And third, that epigenetic light switch just flips. Instantly, you see, the children's eyes flash with color, their posture straightens up, their inner strength returns, and for the very first time in their lives, they actually find the energy to speak. It's the absolute catalyst for everything they are going to become.
And finally, taking the #1 spot on our countdown, an unlikely heroine.
At the very emotional core of this universe, we meet Ella. And what is so fascinating about Ella is that she isn't some all-powerful magic user. She's actually a young, totally unaligned caverling, one of the descendants of the groundlings, who live hidden away in the deep caves of the fifth moon. But she is the one chosen to serve as the liaison. She essentially becomes Rowena's right hand. She's out there bravely nursing these terrifyingly fragile hatchlings back to health, and she carries her ancestors' ancient staff to boldly represent the aligned folks at the deeply political Caverner Assembly. She is the crucial bridge between normal humans and these literal demigods. Looking at Ella's timeline, her whole ascent is just incredibly rapid and chaotic. On her very first day on the job, a shooting star hits, and boom, she's called to the Elder's Palace. Within her first fortnight, she is already elbows deep rescuing and bathing traumatized hatchlings. She claims her ancestral staff. But everything, and I mean everything, changes years later when she accidentally eats a batch of pemmican made by Yarrow, the powerful thermoid. The massive catch here, Yarrow had been playfully blasting the floor with atomic plasma just to entertain his pack cat, Sparky, while he was cooking the food. He accidentally infused that pemmican with highly volatile active strong force magic. So, Alla, a completely normal, unaligned human, eats this stuff and immediately passes out cold. But when she wakes up, she discovers she has developed this utterly unique form of synesthesia. She can suddenly see the microscopic, totally invisible slips and energy fields of the aligned. It begs the question, what happens when a normal human starts physically experiencing the fundamental forces of the universe? What kind of dormant epigenetic secrets are hiding in our own DNA? Well, that is an absolute cliffhanger that will leave you totally desperate to dive into the source material to find out for yourself. And that wraps up our top 5 essential elements for MoonDom FiVe. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the universe.